Welcome to the Stone Carvers Guild podcast. Here you will meet a variety of carvers working throughout North America. Drawing on our collective experience, we seek to share knowledge about this ancient art and to do our part to ensure that stone carving will play an important role in built environments for generations to come. So whether you are an experienced carver, new to the craft, or just curious, put on your safety goggles, open up your mind, and welcome to the workshop.
I'm Matt Johnson.
I'm Bethany Lee.
And I'm Joel Penorwood. Welcome, everybody.
So, Bethany, you've been on the road.
I've been on the road. I went to Frassinoro, Italy.
For fun or for work?
There's not really a difference.
Why not
there?
Yeah, totally.
No, I went to visit my quote-unquote master. His name is Dario Tazzioli, and he's the person that I originally apprenticed with when I got serious about stone carving. And he lives up like on the other side of the mountains from Carrara.
Okay.
And he's this guy who learned from a master who learned from a master who learned from a master. Like, he's part of like this living tradition lineage.
The chain. Yeah.
And super, super traditional. So no pneumatic tools, Matthew.
Oh, okay. The controversy continues. What's this guy's name? I'm going to go and look him up.
Oh, his name is Dario Tazzioli. I can send you his website.
Tazzioli.
Yeah, if you can't find it.
Well, no, I meant I'm going to go over there and give him a piece of my mind.
So I don't know if I'm allowed to do this, but I'm organizing a workshop next year for Americans to come over. That was part of the reason I went. So I went for just a week to do a little bit of continuing education. I learned like how to do copying of a model where you enlarge or reduce it using calipers rather than a pointing machine. So like going a little bit further back in time than the pointing machine. And then I also, checked out a hotel and some other stuff in the area for next year. Hopefully I'll be able to bring some more people and we can have kind of a formal workshop.
Wow.
There. So you can come, Matthew. It'll be
maybe
fun.
I'll just come in and I'll just what would that be? Workshop bomb? Like if I just
totally.
show up?
Yeah, you totally can. You totally can.
We just hear the sound of pneumatic tools coming over the hillside.
Who is that guy?
Yeah.
Great.
That sounds exciting and fun. And how long were you over there for?
I was only there for about 10 days.
Wow.
Yeah, so
That's
short
nice
trip.
That's a nice little trip, though.
Yeah, it was. It was. And I drove around in a little Panda Fiat.
Oh, yes.
In the little windy mountain roads and didn't die, which was kind of an accomplishment. And it was kind of a retreat. It's beautiful up there. It's so beautiful. And secluded in the mountains, carving for a week.
Nice.
Doesn't really get better than that.
I don't mean to dox anybody here, but I also saw Fred X. He shared some things in the forum. Seemed like it came from Italy. Well, did I miss?
Oh yeah, no, I think I
thought you guys were like with each other there.
No, I didn't know he was there. I mean, I saw the forum too, so yeah, pretty cool. Very cool.
All reasons you should all join the Stone Carvers Guild.
That's
right, for sure.
That's right.
There's selfish reasons and unselfish reasons.
Yeah.
Carry the tradition forward and get to go to Italy.
So Matthew, did it cool down in Texas yet?
It has, and then I left. And now I'm in California just for the week. But I'll be back in Texas. And yes, it did cool down. It was nice. Of course, everyone immediately started complaining because it was so cold. It was 40 degrees.
Oh my gosh!
But I was
give me a break.
I was happy with it. I was happy to have that break. This was a rough summer.
It snowed at my house 2 days ago.
Really?
Yeah.
What?
Yes. I have the pictures to prove it. It was, I won't expose what day of what month it was because this podcast comes out later in time. You don't want it to feel too dated.
Oh.
Shock of the snow might do that.
Well, it is interesting that it's July and it snowed there.
We have worked our way out on these podcasts for a amount. I would like to know what some of the projects you guys are all currently on.
Well, I'm working on that. Were we recording when I was talking about those ionic capitals that are coming down my pipe? I don't think they were. So I got some ionic capitals, a stream of ionic capitals coming, which is exciting and also kind of terrifying because I don't know if either of y'all have done like highly repetitive work. It's fun because I see it as a challenge of like, it's almost like an efficiency challenge. Like how can I make these moves, one after another and get this process down. But it can be a little bit mind numbing when you're doing 10 or 20 of the same thing. It numbs you. But they're going to be cool. They're Scaramosi is the name of the style of the ionics. It's when the volute curves out and rather than it being flat, it comes out at 45 degrees from the corner, and so it just makes it a lot more. It's a lot more of an elaborate carving than just a traditional ionic, which is pretty flat.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Scaramosi,
I think is what it. Are you Googling?
Yeah. I'm just curious. Interesting.
Does that
and where are they going?
Right?
Yeah, I mean it pulled up Scamozzi.
See, it's because of that guy that worked in the Trump administration, Scaramucci, that I keep calling. So it's Scamozzi. I need to learn this.
Yes.
I cannot talk about this without.
How interesting.
Now, where do you learn the many different historical types and kinds of ionic capitals? What kind of resources have you drawn upon?
These are famous. This is a famous type of ionic, and despite the fact that I totally mispronounced the name of it, it's something that a lot of architects know. Scamozzi was an architect, and he probably because he thought that doing just like I was describing the mind numbingness of doing 20 of the same thing, he probably wanted to change up the ionics a little bit and put his own little spin on it. And so he came up with this design. But I have a book, and in the conversation that we're about to have with Bob and Mary, Bob will mention this book, but it's an illustrated guide to architectural terms. And I cannot recommend this highly enough. And I was so excited when I was in Florence about 10 years ago, and I found a copy of it in Italian. And it's the same book that Bob had when I was doing my apprenticeship and learning from him. And so I was so excited to find the same book, but in Italian. But it's extremely helpful. It's just called the Dictionary of Architectural Terms, or Illustrated Dictionary of Architectural Terms.
Cool.
It's really helpful resource. It's fantastic.
Cool. Thank you.
So,
cool. Bethany, what have you been working on other than setting exciting things up in Italy for the future?
Let's see. Well, I just started doing it's an oval limestone shrine to Saint Michael for a church here in DC. That it's just I think I just finished making a model, so now I need to quote it and stuff. It's a relief carving.
So you make the model before you do the quote?
In this case, I did because we weren't sure what size it would be. So I made a model, and then I also made a drawing, and then copied the drawing some different sizes and actually brought the drawings down to the church and like stuck them up on the wall to see the scale. Yeah.
So what you were learning in Italy is going to be really useful in this project, because the model is not necessarily to scale, but it's not 1-to-1.
Well, that's an interesting point. Well, I actually haven't decided yet if I'm going to do direct carving or if I'm going to do a model, like an actual full-size model, and
I see.
Copy it. Yeah.
Do you use a pointing machine a lot?
I guess it depends on what you mean by a lot. So right now I'm using a pointing machine for a project. I haven't done that much figurative work. So I haven't done that much stuff that's sufficiently complex to require copying. But I've used a pointing machine a couple of times so far. Yeah.
It's kind of a fun process. I don't use it very often either, but it's always terrifying to drill into the stone and be like, there's no way it's going to be this deep.
Oh.
It's always like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm going in this far. Because, when you do direct carving, you're always like reining back a little bit. You don't want to cut right to it. So the idea of drilling right to the surface, even if you leave a little bit, it still feels scary.
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah.
How about you, Joel? What are you working on?
Oh, I've just got some V-cut lettering for a local event hall, a large granite block that they want inscription in, and it's being set between 2 field stones.
I didn't know that you did granite carving.
I do now. And going through a lot of chisels in the process. No, not going through any chisels. Just keeping them a little bit sharper.
Sure.
So are most of your projects on field stones?
Where I'm at, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, because in my part of the country and the people that I associate with would have a great fondness and love for the land.
Yeah.
They're around, and they have an emotional attachment to the stone themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And there's sort of a trend going around for this traditional style of lettering within a natural stone and marrying the two.
Are these
with that?
Are these stones that have been removed from the field so that they can plow the field? Or
sometimes.
Okay.
Or ones that we have excavated ourselves, or ones that have been found while somebody has built a house. It has been one where their families have all done pictures around their backyard for years and years, and suddenly they want their names on it,
So
foot-tall names.
What's the geology of that? So you said this one you're doing right now is granite?
That's correct. This one is granite. There's a local limestone cavern called Ohio Caverns that contracted me out earlier this year to carve letters into a piece of the cavern, reclaimed cavern limestone from a new entrance that they had built, and as a result had actually had to remove part of the cavern ceiling to make this new entrance. So there's this old piece of the cavern stone that used to have stalactites hanging off of it. That was no more, and they wanted natural wonder entrance carved on it, the date in which it was opened. So did that on site for all the tourists, and that was fun. So
that is fun.
Did that over a couple days, and it was great.
They didn't want Kilroy was here.
Oh, maybe it made it on there in the back. Like the World War II monument with the John Stevens shop. No, that didn't make it on there. No, so that's what I'm doing over in my part of the world.
Cool.
I've also been getting back to some smaller relief carvings in both limestone as well as slate. So varying between the different kinds of rocks right now.
Wow.
And learning a lot in the process.
Cool.
Well, should we get to this interview?
Hey, yeah. Who are we talking to today?
Bob Ragan and Mary Condon, the founders and owners of Texas Carved Stone, which has now been retired, but was a major force in Texas architecture for about probably 30, 40 years in the Texas and, nationwide and even worldwide. But I had the good fortune of working with them for years there. And so I'm looking forward to sitting down and talking with them.
Yeah. Yeah. They're where you come from. It's pretty cool. Matthew, you know Bob and Mary, and Joel and I don't at all. So maybe you could introduce them to us?
Yes. So I've known Bob and Mary since I was 10 years old, which is a little bit over 40 years. And at some point, my dad sold me into apprenticeship with Bob. And I started working for them when I was about 19, I think, 19 or 20. Mm-hmm. And they've always just been super creative, very interesting people. And one of the reasons why I wanted to make sure that Mary was a part of the conversation as well is because it's really from her that I learned, there's a business side to everything as well. And she was the business manager, is that how you describe yourself, Mary, with Texas Carved Stone?
That would work. I had certainly help managing, but I was more of the friendly face, Matt, able to do
Bob was friendly.
Oh yeah,
but Bob was scary to all of us apprentices.
Mary and Bob, how would you introduce yourselves to folks who've never met you?
Well, we ran our business for 32 years, and like any business at time, it was stressful, but we both loved the business and what we were doing. It was very interesting, the type of work and the types of people that we got to meet. And then I also had a sideline as the mayor of a small town, so I stayed busy.
And Bob, how do you when you're at a party, do you run into like people just kind of getting glassy-eyed and not really understanding what it is what you do, or does that not happen to you anymore?
Oh yeah, that happens all the time. They ask you what you do, and I tell them I'm a stone carver. Oh, you do gravestones,
right?
And you explain to them that we do elaborate architectural carving and sculpture and, anything, gravestones too.
Right.
But, most people are pretty fascinated by it, I was.
Yeah, for sure. So how did you get started when you were, tell us when that happened and
okay.
And how it happened.
Well, I've always drawn, and done artwork, and painted and stuff like that when, even at a young age. But anyway, once I got out of the service, I tied up with a group of gypsy bricklayers in Oklahoma, and we were breaking Indian houses for the government. And one of the guys, his name was Milton Tolliver Nunn. He happened to be Gary P. Nunn's cousin. And he talked our boss into, who was Larry Walter Watley, talked him into taking us all to Austin because it was so great down here. And so when we finished up what we were doing, we just came down. And when we got to Austin, I had to learn how to lay rock, stone, because almost all of it was stone down here. And I, while I was banging on the rocks, I said, well, heck, I need to start carving this stuff. And so I started making sculptures. And one day when I was in the yard carving, two guys drove up and said, are you the one that carved that keystone in that building downtown? And I said, yeah. And they said, well, we've opened up a little mill down the road, and we'd like for you to come carve for us. I said, I don't know that much about architectural carving. I know what it looks like, and I assumed that I could learn pretty quick how to do it. But there it is. I said, how much can you pay me? And at the time, I was making about $25 an hour doing my masonry work. And they said, well, to start off with, probably be about $7 an hour. So I jumped in the pickup with them and took off.
And that's when you went to Double R. Is that right?
Yeah, Double R Cutstone. Yeah, and that's when I became a professional stone carver.
And who was the guy that was running Double R? What was his name?
What was his name, Mary?
I can't remember.
Oh, how could I forget him?
They didn't last long. The IRS shut them down. But while Bob was there, he realized that there was an opportunity to work with designers, because designers would come in. And of course, the mill was interested in production work, and they would put all this stuff on the back burner. And that's when he came up with the idea of Texas carved stone.
Well, they would start handing those jobs to me when they were a month late, and I would do them in my spare time. And I was working 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. And because when I first started, the money was not that great. And at that time, they didn't have to pay you overtime. It's your choice.
You learned from, I can't remember the guy's name either, but he taught you a lot about like design and drafting and
he went through stuff. He went through like Indiana University. They were trying to, on the GI Bill after World War II, they were trying to bring the stone industry back, and so they put about 200 of these guys through, teaching them everything from get-go to finish,
His name was Homer.
Yeah.
Homer, right.
Yeah. Homer Robertson.
Right.
It was Robertson and Roper.
That's right.
And Homer had that big book of all the classical orders.
Yeah.
That I remember you'd bring that out every once in a while when we were working, and we'd go over.
He was a great draftsman. I mean, he did everything by hand. All the shop tickets, everything was just drawn, That was before the computer.
Amazing.
Well, before
right.
certainly.
Yeah. And
so you're talking about a stone mill, right? Just to be
yes.
clear. Okay.
Yeah.
Not grinding flour there. So what kind of stuff would they make? Can you explain for our listeners a bit about what a stone mill is and what gets made at a stone mill?
They usually do architectural work, and it's all to specification. It's to architect's drawings or shop drawings, and for each and every piece, there might be, if you might have a fireplace with an overmantel that goes up to the ceiling. It might have 30 pieces, and or more, and every piece has to be drawn on a shop ticket, given all and everything that's supposed to happen, showing four, all views of it.
Okay.
and
then the mill would produce that, and the mill would, use things like planers and saws and then some handwork. Ultimately, at the end of the line, you'd be looking at handwork. But again, the mills are more interested in large production, like, maybe, windowsills and window surrounds, door surround, on a large scale, things of that nature.
Okay.
And were you the only carver, Bob, at the time, or was there a couple of people, or?
There was a guy that came over from one of the other mills, and he was a good carver, and he was working for them part-time. He would come in the evenings and work for them just for a little extra money. And he was very unfriendly. And whenever he would catch me looking at him or watching what he was doing, he would just turn his back on me, And one day I walked up to him and I said, he had this real intricate thing going on. I said, "Are you doing all of that with that air hammer?" He just looked at me. He rolled up all of his chisels in a piece of newspaper and got his hammer and walked out. He did not want it. He did not want anybody to learn his profession. So I from that time on, I taught everybody I could.
Right.
But then I had to kind of learn it all by myself.
Just looking at things.
I should have been more careful at my looking.
But you were a mason, so you said you started off bricklaying.
Yeah.
But you said you were pounding on stone. So yeah. I have no idea what masons do. So what's the link, or like how much did you already know from masonry that carried over into the carving?
Again, Bob has always specialized in anything that he did. And at the time in Austin, things were starting to, it was not like it is today, but, build up. And so there were lots of houses being put up, and a mason would be someone that would wrap the house in stone or brick. But that was not what interested Bob. So he specialized in fireplace faces. And for years, we had a small masonry company where we just specialized in interior work. And I would mix the mud.
She was the mudder.
Miss Mud.
Miss Mud, my mother called me.
Muscular.
And Bob was so meticulous with each stone. He would shape each stone that would go into the face of a fireplace that I could mix a 1 in 3 of mud, and it'd last them all day.
No.
Yeah, it would. So he became well known in the Austin area for his fireplace, and we stayed busy at that. And then we moved out of Austin out to the country, and we kind of had to reinvent ourselves. And that's when he, after a number of years, found that mill job. And then shortly after that, we started in 87 Texas Carved Stone, because he saw a niche. He saw like I can cater to designers and architects who want something special.
We built a total masonry fireplaces for a long time too. We did the whole thing, the chimney, the box, everything, Rumford fireplaces.
So when you were shaping these stones that Mary would make the mud for and then walk away for a day,
I'd go knit.
What
she would sit down and read.
Nice.
What tools were you using to shape them? Were you just using like a rock hammer? What were you using?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, the ones with the square end and then the chisel end. Yeah. Rock hammer.
When did you get your first chisel, and how did that happen?
I wasn't like making sculptural stuff with it. I know. I liked my joints to be real uniform and tight.
So you started R&R. That's when you got learned okay, here are the tools of the trade.
Yeah.
And you came across those chisels. Did you get a set? Because by the time I started as an apprentice, you had like already found Dan at Bybee,
Right.
Dan Roberts.
Yeah.
And so how did that happen? Was that something that you learned at R&R as well, or did you just come across him? How did that happen?
Well, the tools were at R&R, and for his birthday that year, I had, found out where these tools were coming from. I bought him one of those Trow and Holden kits where they have like the 6 major chisels and a hammer, which he quickly lost.
And I bought it. I
have that kit.
Italian hammer as well, Couture. But I started off with a screwdriver and a hammer.
Yes.
A screwdriver and a carpenter's hammer. Whenever I teach groups of kids, I tell them to do that with their dad's best screwdriver.
Oh, funny.
Well, you can get away with that with the Texas limestone. It's soft enough.
Yeah.
Mm. So who taught you, Bob? I mean, who would you consider your teachers to be?
He taught himself.
Yeah, pretty much.
He taught himself.
But you must have had resources, like you referenced this book from Homer and.
They didn't. Now Homer knew a little. He knew what cut stone looked like, and how it could be done, but he couldn't. He never really did much cut stone. But I had been like thumbing masonry or architecture books, and there's the architectural dictionaries, that have pictures.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, pictures of everything, and I'd already gone through all of that stuff looking at it, so I knew how things went in the wall, and how it all worked. But the only thing I had to learn was how to make the chisel and the hammer work.
Mm.
So Walter said something the other day he was sending out some information to all of us on the guild site or emails, whatever. And he said, if you can draw it, you can carve it. And that was the reality for Bob, because Bob could draw. And once he drew it, I have absolutely no talent in that way. And it always amazed me to watch all of the guys and gals take a piece of stone and create what they created. But they see it,
From what I'm hearing here and what I've seen as far as some of Bob's work, it sounds like that it's been an evolution in complexity, in creativity. Would you say that's right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
yes.
And a lot of hard hours. We finished jobs at 3:00 in the morning. Matt knows. We've got to put it on. We got to put it on the truck in the morning. A lot of hard work.
There has been there wasn't. It wasn't like though you came out fully formed as far as a carver though. Wouldn't you say that that's fair, that you did over time learn the certain nuances of the craft? Is that true? Is that
absolutely?
That was always my yeah.
I mean, most of my apprentices taught me stuff
just by talking, giving you lip and telling you.
Just by making mistakes.
Yeah, we did that plenty
and pointing out something that I did wrong, No, actually, there was, it was after a while, you guys got so good that, you were beating me in the carving contests, and
not at first.
Well, it's just. But it's interesting because when we were talking with Nick, he was talking about how the the benefit of learning through the English system is that he was surrounded by carvers that had institutional knowledge stretching back hundreds of years.
And there's a great quote from Nick in the last conversation we had that says something along the lines of, what I'm passing along to you, you have to go pass along to somebody else, or else the craft will die.
That's right.
And sounds like the same sentiment on your end.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but a lot of times those apprenticeships in Europe, it was like basic training in the Army. You know, they treated you like hell, and
I'm sure.
But not all of it. But I mean, a lot of guys that I've talked to, you know, said that you know, they really try to keep you down, and work you, you know. But I never had that. I never had that. You know, as soon as I got someone trained up well enough to trust them, to get the job done the way it's drawn, then I put an apprentice with them.
Yeah. And Matt, you remember, and I remember this so well, times in the shop when something would come in that we'd never done before, particularly like the Louis fireplaces, right? And remember figuring out how to lay that out, how everything came together. So it was absolutely an evolutionary process for all of you.
I think the thing that was always impressed me about, because the thing that always impressed me about Bob's ability to see things, and I guess this does stem from like being such a talented drawer, draftsman, just illustrator, is you were able to see like a photograph, and through your experience of looking at those fireplaces, like really accumulate that knowledge of like how lines work and flow together, like the Louis the French fireplaces, where, you know, originally we thought that they dipped back, and then we realized that curve was it never passed. It never went back. It always came forward. It's, you know what you remember what I'm talking about?
Yeah. I noticed, you know, that I realized that I have a pretty good eye for design.
Right.
But that's just from doing things over and over and over until it, you know, and, you know, figuring things out. And that's very helpful, you know, to have a eye for design.
So what are some of the early projects that stick out in your mind of like really pushing your knowledge?
Yeah. I'm looking at Mary.
One of the first big projects that, I remember this. This was not so much complex carving, and I can't remember the term. We did an entryway in someplace in Oklahoma. I think it was Tulsa. And do you remember that the arch how you struggled with that?
Mm-hmm.
What kind of arch was that called? It was like a compound arch or something like that. I can't remember, but it was difficult, and we had to get it done, because another thing about Bob is he never turned a job away. And I would say to him, "Can you do that?" He said, "I don't know, but we'll find out." You know, that was always we'll figure this out. But that was very early on, and you struggled with that, and you had Homer helping you at that time with the drafting of it.
Yeah.
And
French fireplace. My first French fireplace was, I mean, it just blew my mind. I was smoking my brain, But the Louis fireplace,
Mm-hmm.
that was there's a lot of curvature there and stuff that has to be done by hand, and it, to get all that down right, it took me a while.
And like, going back to Nick and Patrick and, the guys that we know in the guild that were taught in Europe would have had that knowledge because they, that was taught. But Bob just he winged it and he got it.
Yeah, we sold most of my mistakes.
You said most of your mistakes? Any that didn't sell?
No,
There's a couple of
done. There were pieces that we would reject. That was something about the shop. Everybody had an eye for quality, and we knew we had built our reputation on producing a quality product. And if a piece went south during carving because of a dry or, too many pits in the stone or whatever, we would put it aside and, get another piece of stone and make it right. So we never shipped a mistake.
How many were regularly working in the shop?
It varied from time to time. When we were in full production, we were very, very busy. We had 13 people working in the shop. There were about 5 or 6, really good carvers. And then we had, people that could break a piece down and get it to a certain point and then hand it off to the carver. And then we had sanders, to sand the finished product. So, Matt managed it for a while, and he knows, keeping 13 people busy. Bob would be upstairs drawing because we always did the carving patterns were full hand-drawn patterns, and then we would import it into CAD. Matt or some of our drafts people, and send it out for approval. But the patterns themselves were hand-drawn. Mac did a lot of them. Bob did, miles of them.
Yeah.
And the thing is, what Mary was talking about, when you bring a helper in, they sweep the floor and clean up and sand. Then you have a piece that a certain amount of stone needs to come out of. You give them a saw and set it to the depth that you want. Tell them to just make cuts, and then when they get through with that, you put a hammer and a chisel in their hand and let them knock off everything that they sawed. That's how it starts.
That's how they get addicted.
Yeah. And
that's the gateway.
So, and it's a little bit at a time, and you don't ever trust them. Keep an eye on them. And then eventually they get up and running, and they end up teaching other apprentices.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, when you first start off, you're in the shop by yourself. You do everything. You do the sanding, you do the breaking down, you do the movement of the stone, you do the palletizing, the crating, you do everything. And a lot of these guys that, not a lot, but some of the guys in the guild, I'm sure that they know how that feels. And
yeah.
And so what I wanted to do was build up a crew, and let people specialize in different stuff and move up to being a carver. And I had people doing the crating and the palletizing, and, everything was taken care of.
To my knowledge, and I'm not positively sure about this, and you can think about it too, Matt, we were the first shop that we knew of that hired women. And over the years, we had quite a few women carvers in our shop.
Yeah, at the time when we joined the guild, I don't think there were any women members.
Except for ours.
Except for Mary. Not you, Mary, the other Mary.
The other Mary and Rebecca.
Rebecca, right.
Yeah. And over time, more Margaret,
Mary Coons.
Mary.
Yeah, that's.
You said that.
Yeah.
So, and it was neat over time because as, we started the business in 87 and we stopped in 2020. So we had a long run, but some people had moved on. We had people come from different parts of the country to train under Bob. And that was always fun. But they would then go out and start their own shops. Like Zeke went back to Philadelphia and started working there. He's now in Canada. Mary has her own shop. Matt does. Stu, another carver that was with us for a number of years. So that was very neat, Jeremy, to see people go and be able to take this trade that they've learned and make a living at it.
They became pretty tough competition.
Wow.
Except for I don't think any of us ever created the thing that you were just talking about, Bob, where like you had like all the aspects. Because like when you were describing the carver that has to do the sanding and has to do the palletizing and all of the aspects, I was thinking, well, that's me, like all of that stuff. And I don't know that anybody ever. I mean, it was a unique feature of your business in Texas, especially where you had just such a big operation as far as people doing all the different things. And part of the appeal for me of that when I was young was that it was never boring.
Right.
You're always moving around and doing different things and learning what you're good at, learning the things that's like, okay, I'm not going to do that. Like there was that forklift that I always got stuck that eventually it's like, no, let's not have Matt operate that.
Did you hit a pebble in the driveway and it won't move anymore? That's what happened.
It was in my defense, it was a forklift that was designed for a warehouse and we were using it in mud
and then dirt.
And I would bottom it out. And anytime it rained, I would bottom it out in the boneyard. Yeah. And there would be a all hands on deck trying to get that thing out of the mud.
Yeah. And sometimes we had pallets that were overloaded, and we'd have to get 2 or 3 guys to sit on the back of the forklift so we could...
Oh yeah, right. I forgot it.
There you go.
Well, especially when we're you'd load a big semi on a flatbed, and you have to lift, 1,800 pounds up 8 feet.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when we would all get on the back of that forklift and lean back, and to ballast it.
Yeah,
when you would get tipsy up there.
Bob and Mary, what a cool legacy to have with so many carvers that have come through your shop and that have gone on to make legacies of their own, like Matt here. What is some advice you would give to those who have apprentices or will have apprentices on making it a good experience and, being a good apprenticeship?
Yeah.
I think one of the aspects of Bob is that and again, we've met other people throughout the years in the industry who maybe don't want to share all of their knowledge. There is still some of that, I learned this, now I don't know, but Bob was always willing to teach any and all. He really took great pride in that. And we had a very open shop in the sense of we had a big shop. It was a large space, and people would just come. We would have busloads. It used to drive Matt crazy. We'd have busloads of like folks coming to see the place. It was kind of like a little stop, on a tour type of deal. And they were just fascinated. They'd come in and dust would be flying and chisels are going and the hammers and music, always music in the shop. And they'd just be amazed because they would say, we didn't think anybody did this anymore. So it really is a wonderful legacy. We are both very proud of the business.
And where would you find apprentices? Where did you find Matt?
Well, Matt's father indentured him to us. Like
he did.
He was dropped on their doorstep.
We were at dinner.
We were at dinner.
We were at dinner, and I don't know how it came up. I think I was looking for a summer job or something.
You were looking for a summer job. That's absolutely right. And your
dad
right.
did some sort of deal.
And so one of, and we were in a smaller shop at that time, but we had a job up in Fort Worth, and there was a lot of egg and dot on it. Do you remember this, Matt?
Yes, I do.
Yes. And we're, of course, under deadline. And, we're doing these runs of egg and dot. And they were window surrounds. So, maybe pieces that 4 foot long, 6 foot long. And one of Matt's first days there, I think you were sanding or were you carving by that time?
Is this the one about when I broke that one?
Yes, Matt.
It wasn't my first day.
It wasn't your first day.
No, if it had been my first day, I would have left. I would have been mortified. But yeah, early on, and this was Bob's fault. This was not my fault.
It was. I set it up.
It was Bob's fault
because pieces that hung out past the edge of the table enough to fall off, and so we put another piece on top of them
to counterweight.
So Matt takes the piece on top off, and boom, they all went on the floor.
It was just one, but Matt was horrified. He was horrified. It's just like, what are you going to do? That stuff's going to happen. You regroup, and those are the nights you worked late because you did have to get the stuff on the truck and out the door at some point.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, Bethany, to answer your question for Bob and Mary, I think that the thing that most of the apprentices came from just kind of wondering what's going on in there. Yeah. And then we'd have this steady stream of people coming through, a lot of them were curious about our work.
Local people.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then some of them would just get the bug and be like, where do I sign up? How do I get involved in this?
One of our
one
really good carver, Shelby Haggerton, he came in and worked for us for a summer, and then when school started, he quit school.
But y'all didn't let him. Y'all didn't let him do that.
I fired him. I said, I will not. You will complete high school if you're going to work here.
So quit high school.
We hired him back, and he worked for us for many years.
Well,
he turned into an incredible carver.
Principal called us and said, "Appreciate you guys, firing him, try to send him back to school." He said, "But you might as well hire him back because he's not coming back."
But he did get his GED,
and he turned out to be a damn good carver.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
So was the shop in a sort of a public place, or how did people find it?
We were out in the boonies at that time. We had 17 acres and a large shop. We were on a highway that was busy, but not overly busy. Just kind of we had a really good client that we had for years. She owned an oil company, and we had just done an ad in a publication called Traditional Building.
Mm-hmm.
And couple of days after the ad, she came walking into the shop with the ad, and she said, "Don't ever let anybody tell you that advertising doesn't work." And we worked on her projects for a lot of our clients had multiple houses around the country and whatnot. And we worked on her stuff for years. She'd add on or build another house. Or Bob always liked it when the very wealthy divorced, because they'd each then build another house.
Yeah. They did it too. And but my thing in the beginning was to seek the highest end. I
in what sense?
I didn't want to mess around with the, I wanted the high end stuff,
Well, high end market.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it took us a while to figure out how you found the high end market, but we did.
Well, it's word of mouth. Do
Yes.
do a little bit of advertising, and you sell 1 or 2 jobs off of each ad, and then that'll sell 6 more jobs, and then those sell some more and more and more.
Right.
Okay.
We all found out that if you delivered a quality product on time and, without a lot of hassle, then the architect, the builder, and the designer on the job would come back to you again and again.
Mm-hmm. And even the stone setters.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I want to interject, because I do think that this is where Mary was a special kind of an X factor, because I don't know if you've noticed, Bethany and Joel and listeners, but Mary is incredibly charming. And
Mayor Mary, right?
Yes, I am.
And to Mary would just pull out all the stops, all the charm stops when clients would come by. And if you ever get a chance to meet her in person, you'll notice that, like, you feel like when you're talking to Mary, you feel like you're the most important person in the world. And that's a really special skill. And so I just wanted to shout that out just a little bit, Mary, because I do think that was a part of the whole. Yes, of course, delivering a great carving and doing it on time and all that stuff, but also people wanted to work with Bob and Mary. They're kind of they're an attractive couple. Would you say that's fair?
I think that's fair.
Thank you, Maddie.
See, and I learned a little bit from them.
Yeah.
Yes, you're charming.
You're being
also.
charming, yeah.
I will say, for the listeners, a little behind the scenes look. The Stone Carvers Guild, we did a sound check the day before this recording with Mary, and it was charming. Matt, you're spot on. I was just beaming ear to ear after just a quick little sound check. I was like, that was wonderful.
Right.
And that doesn't often come out of a sound check, let me tell you.
So, Mary, what was your role in the business, and did you carve? I know you said you didn't draw much, but yeah, can you tell us what you did?
You would sand when we got desperate.
I did. I was out in the shop and sand when we needed it, but I ran the front office and did all the HR and engaged with all of our clients, and it always amazed me because part of my deal was if you get a phone call, you call back right away. I mean, as soon as you are able. And people used to say to me, "Thank you so much for calling back." I'm always like, that's my job. And I did have a way of, because a lot of, ours was an expensive product. So, maybe if something were going out of the shop at $50,000 or $60,000 or and a lot more, we would ask for a 50% deposit and then 50% upon delivery. And, some people were a little nervous about that. And I think I had a way. And then, of course, over time, we had a reputation. We're not going to take your money and not deliver. But I find it easy to talk to people. And I guess.
That sounds invaluable.
How did you all figure out what to price things at? That's something I struggle with.
That was just, so that's really funny because at first, we would figure up a job and put the hours on it and the materials and some kind of multiplier for profit. And I would think, oh my God, this fireplace is $8,500. And I'd be terrified to call the person back and say, well, this will be $8,500, and, once you're in a higher end market, that's like, okay. And I got to the point where I'd call up and say, this fireplace is $185,000, and then go, okay. And it was just, it's amazing to me because it's a different.
Then they'd send you a deposit check.
Yeah, it's a different scope of work and a different market than, say, we're all normally used to. But
it took a while.
It took a while to figure it out. Matt was great when Matt came. Go ahead.
What Bob taught me, and you too, Mary. But we would go through. It really worked well when I was managing the shop, and Bob would do pricing, and I had already kind of learned how to do pricing, and then Mary would also have an idea, and so the three of us would kind of go off. And Bob and I kind of used the same method. We would look at all the different components, and we would calculate how long is this going to take, and then go through that, add up all that time, and then, like Mary said, we'd multiply it by rate and profit and tax and all that stuff. And then Mary would just shoot one from the hip, and. And so the three of us would then come back together with our numbers, and I'd usually be a little bit low, and Bob would be a little bit high maybe, and then Mary would have the hip price, and it would usually settle right in the middle, and it'd be like, well, let's just go with that one then. And that seemed to work for years. That worked well. Where
it did, but Matt has incredible computer skills, and of course when we first started.
Incredible computer skills to someone with no computer skills.
Right. But he taught himself CAD. He said, we have to buy, this computer and get a CAD program. And at that time, the CAD was fairly pricey. And, but we did it, and he sat down and taught himself CAD, and he's good on Excel spreadsheets and stuff. And so he finally got to the point where he was importing everything into that, and it streamlined the process. But it was always, from start to finish, it was always a guessing game on pricing. But we learned with the market that we were in, price wasn't really their first consideration. Our clients wanted what they wanted.
They wanted to be pampered, and they want a high quality product. And
what's the book, Matt, that I read by the English author, Acquired Taste?
Oh yeah.
By, I forget, Peter, I can't remember his last name, but anyone working in a high-end market should read this book. It's hysterical. And it gives you some inkling of like, oh, well, this will be okay. Yeah.
Is it a book about how to acquire taste, or
no? It's about what the very wealthy want.
Okay.
They gave him how much money?
I think it was. He was either the New Yorker. Yeah, I think it was the New Yorker. He said, "Let me write this book and give me enough money for a year to live like a multi-billionaire."
Well, now that is clever.
Yeah,
clever.
And they went for it, and the book that came out of it is just hysterical.
He went immediately $5,000 shoes made.
Right, everything was bespoke, and and he would describe when you go into, say, Savile Row in London and you're having a suit made, what actually transpires there. You're petted and pampered and it's very true. And he would go through he went through a lot of different things that people at that level want. Yeah, it's a great book. Peter Maul.
Mary would talk about this book all the time. And then Bob, you would talk about that Peter, what is that movie? About the rich English people.
Oh, the ruling
with Peter,
class.
The ruling class.
Peter Sellers.
No,
Peter. No, it was the other Peter.
It was that really tall guy. I can't remember his name. Yeah.
But they would walk through the shop, and that was another thing that was fun. Like, like a group of like a bunch of, 20-somethings from, with varying degrees of education, and Bob and Mary would just come through and like just start talking about stuff like they were just talking about, and you'd just sit there and be like, wow, okay, and you'd go off and read this book or watch this movie, and there was always a lot of learning going on that wasn't immediately related to stone carving, but that it all kind of like informed what we were doing in the shop. Like this is the approach to what we're trying to do. And I always thought that was really, really smart on y'all's part. Well, we are probably at a good stopping point for the first part of the multi-part interview with Bob and Mary that we'll be doing over the course of many months, I hope.
I hope
Is
so.
that, in other words, we want y'all to come back, but we should probably stop now.
Okay. Right. Thank you so much. It's been delightful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on.
You've been listening to the Stonecarvers Guild podcast. We hope you've enjoyed this conversation, and we hope that you will find us online at stonecarversguild.org. There you can find photos showing some of the things that we discussed today, additional information about our guest, and if you're so inclined, ways to get more involved with the Guild and our ongoing activities. And of course, if you've enjoyed this podcast, we hope that you will subscribe and rate us on the podcaster of your choice. 5 stars, please. We'll be back in a month with a new episode, so until then, keep your hammer up and your chisel sharp.